This episode is proudly brought to you by the TPG Telecom Foundation, dedicated to creating opportunities to improve the health, well-being and education of Australian communities in need. Hi, I'm Megan Gilmore, MissingSchool co-founder and CEO, and this is Live&Learn. This is the podcast that unearths insights at the intersection of health and education, building a powerful alliance to keep kids with complex health conditions connected to school from anywhere. The podcast is recorded on Ngunnawal land, and we acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of this land and the land on which you're listening. Welcome to our weekly webcast, a place to zero in on the interplay between health and education and to amplify the voices of those supporting school students to navigate their educational journeys despite complex health challenges. And today on Live&Learn, we have Janna and Hollie. Janna Linke is a healthcare professional, medical communications specialist, and founding board director and clinical education lead at Connective Tissue Disorders Network Australia, CTDNA. Living with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome herself, she brings both professional and lived experience to advocacy and education. Passionate about improving recognition and support for young people with EDS, Janna works to advance awareness, care pathways, and systems change for Australians with heritable connective tissue disorders. Hollie Jones is a kindergarten teacher in Victoria and ambassador for Connective Tissue Disorders Network Australia. She has lived experience as a carer to families living with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, VEDS. Hollie brings both lived and professional insights into the impact of chronic illness on education. Hollie is passionate about improving awareness of heritable connective tissue disorders and supporting flexible, inclusive approaches that help children and young people to stay connected to learning despite disrupted schooling. Welcome, Janna and Hollie. We're excited to have you on Live&Learn today.
Hi, Megan.
Thank you.
So today we're here to talk about supporting school connections for students with complex medical and or mental health conditions. Let's jump into our very first question. So tell us how heritable connective tissue disorders, HCTDs, impact kids and why it's something every Australian needs to know and care about.
So I'll go first on this one, I think. Heritable connective tissue disorders can affect kids in so many ways. It's really varied. It's often invisible. It's often misunderstood. It's often dismissed. And despite having profound impacts on kids' health and education and their development and family life, all of this still happens, this dismissal and misunderstood and delays in diagnosis. So the conditions we're talking about today, known collectively as heritable connective tissue disorders, is a group of dozens of conditions that includes Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobility spectrum disorder, Marfan, and Loeys-Dietz syndrome, for example. The impacts can be multi-system, so they can affect pretty much any organ system throughout the body. That's because there's connective tissue right throughout the body. Depending on the genomic variation, it can be impacting collagen or extracellular matrix pathways. Connective tissues, as I said, throughout the body, but the impacts on kids are more than just hypermobility and flexibility. They really are system-wide. Every Australian should know and care about heritable connective tissue disorders like EDS and HSD, especially during May, which is EDS and HSD Awareness Month, because it's likely we all know somebody with one of these conditions. They are rare, but they can also be common. There's a huge range in prevalence. But following this, it's because the impacts extend far beyond just the physical, as you say. It's the mental health impacts also of living with complex chronic conditions. And understanding that for all Australians is key because identifying invisible illness and recognising that it may not be invisible, it's just that you haven't known what you're looking for, or being more open to understanding invisible illnesses is key for all Australians. Mm.
That's a great opening and scene setting for us.
Mhm.
So, how many people probably assume things about heritable connective tissue disorders? What's the multi-dollar question that you get from parents or loved ones when their child experiences or is diagnosed with HCTDs?
I think from my perspective as a lived experience leader, and Hollie can add to this, I'm sure, but it's that the invisibleness of it at times, people think it can't be that bad. I think that's a huge assumption. Yeah, that you can't see the cardiovascular impacts, you can't see the gastrointestinal impacts, but they are there and they're very real. You can't see when a child's dizzy or has a racing heart from dysautonomia, but it's there. So I think it's that outward appearance of invisibility at times that is a big misunderstanding, and leads to the assumption that it can't be all that bad.
So, invisible illness there. And
Mm.
Holly, do you have anything to add to that, or would you like to add to that on the $1 million question?
Yeah, I think because it is not very common. It is common, but then it's not. For in particular, my children and their dad, they have a rare subtype of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome called vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or also known as VEDS. And I suppose the invisible side of things that comes with that is fatigue. They will be at school and they'll say they're tired, they've gone for a run, they're fatigued, they need to lie down. And I suppose when a child says, I'm tired, I don't want to do my schoolwork, half the time teachers will just put that to, oh, they just don't want to. They're just being typical child who's tired. But in reality, they're absolutely exhausted. They can't control that fatigue. It's in their body.
Yeah. So these invisible symptoms or
Mm,
effects that are going on also have consequences
yeah.
for children and young people, and those consequences might not be understood or even believed.
Yeah.
Um,
I think for the $1 million question, one that I come up with is, what does it mean for my child's future? Or, how will they be impacted in the long term? And I think the answer to that is you don't really know. It is an unpredictable disease course. But of course, that's an answer that most parents would like to have. Yeah.
yeah. So that leads to really for us to look at this next question, which is, what's the most important thing you want them to know?
Did you want to jump in, Hollie, or shall I go first?
I suppose I'll jump in. I suppose for education settings to know is they need more time, they need more understanding, and patience, because children living with these connective tissue disorders often do fatigue. They often have underlying issues you don't know about or can't see, and it's trying to adapt to what they need. If they're away from school for long periods of time, it's reaching out and saying, hey, what can we do to help? Or how can we change learning to suit your needs? Or what can we provide you with seeing you're at home and you can't be at school with everyone else? Adapting even, for instance, physical education. My children, their PE teacher adjusts their curriculum and their planning to suit the boys. So in school sports, for instance, with pole vault, jumping over the bar, they usually use a metal bar to do that high jump, for instance. And with Hunter and Isaac, they are at risk. If they hit that bar, they can have internal bleeding. They could have dissection in their body. They're at risk of fatal and life-threatening medical episodes. So it's adjusting that for them by putting up a foam bar or giving them something else to do. I suppose it's also knowing the signs of what could be a medical episode. It could be simple as a headache. It could be simple as a sore tummy. A lot of the time with these medical episodes, it sounds like just a child complaining, saying, I've got a headache, I need to lay down, I don't feel well. And if that is ignored, that also could be fatal for that child.
Yeah, and knowing all that, then what if parents come with this million dollar question?
Mm.
What do you want parents to know?
I
What's the
want
most
parents
important thing?
The most important thing is to advocate for your children. Don't give
Mm,
up. Push the school.
yeah,
I'm one of those parents that'll go in there and say, "No, I'm not happy about this," or, we need to work on this. I work with the school. I say, if my child is not feeling well, call me.
yeah,
If they are tired and can't participate, call me. I feel
mm,
like being flexible. I mean, I can because I am home. I know a lot of people do work. I don't work. So, I mean, I am more flexible with it being able to collect them. But I think it's just for other parents who are going through this, it's just advocate for your child. Don't give up. The school can adapt, they can change
mm.
things for your child. You're not being pushy, you're not being annoying. You just need to really just say, no, that this is my life and I need support.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Janna, do you want to add to
Yeah.
that, backing onto the million dollar question, what do you want parents or loved ones to know when their child is diagnosed?
I think really, supporting what Holly said, it's that a diagnosis is really important and an early
Mm,
diagnosis is
yeah.
important. So if you think that your child is living with a condition like hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or any of the syndromic presentations that occur in young children that require, evaluation, it's really important to advocate to get that because, like Holly has said, living with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or Loeys-Dietz or Marfan syndrome, they are conditions that do come with life-limiting impacts. The consequences of some of the manifestations and complications really do need to be um, the diagnosis in early childhood is really imperative to ensure that the surveillance and the monitoring that is needed is happening. So I think supporting what Holly has said about advocating, it's also advocating for a diagnosis as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least a very robust and full evaluation by somebody that understands these conditions. Yeah.
Yes.
To
I
rule
hear
in
in
or
that.
out. Yeah.
Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you there. Yeah, I hear in that don't give up.
Yeah.
Make sure that
Yeah.
the young person is at the center of the
And,
conversation.
an early diagnosis really does improve quality of life as well in the long
Mm,
term as well, because it allows for all of the interventions that, can be enacted and, put in place in early childhood. There's a lot of value in that for quality of life, decades down the line. So, yeah. Mm.
yes, indeed. So if you're willing to answer this question, I think we've got a bit of a hint from both of you as to why, but we'd love to know what brought you into the world of heritable connective tissue disorders.
Jana,
Shall
do you want
I?
to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. So, I mean, it's a very, very long story, so I'll give the very abridged version. I do have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome myself. I was diagnosed after two very difficult pregnancies. I have had symptoms my entire life from a really young age, with my first partial dislocation at around age 4, and a lifetime of dysautonomia and chronic migraines and chronic pain and gastrointestinal issues from early childhood. Which I managed pretty well, just seeing my independent specialist, neurologist, GP, cardiologist, I had this team, but it wasn't until I had my two pregnancies very close together where my body really decided that it did not like that added stress. So throughout that period, after a lot of pretty severe pain where my mobility was severely reduced, I was diagnosed with generalized hypermobility disorder, and from that then Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So that's kind of what brought me to this work. I think having a background in healthcare really spurred me on to setting up CTDNA because I saw the inequity of access to care that exists even in a country like Australia with universal healthcare, living with rare and complex chronic conditions. The support and the network and the way the system works, it's not always set up to deal with that kind of clinical complexity. And there are a lot of people that aren't getting to the care they need because of barriers. Yeah. So so that led to me wanting to set up CTDNA and start advocating to try and improve care for people with these conditions. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And, thanks for doing the work too, because not everybody can do
Yeah.
that. So it's
I also have
important.
two boys who have varying degrees of hypermobility as well. But
Okay.
yeah. And obviously
Lots of
my
experience,
diagnosis means that they are getting all of the early interventions that they need, which is,
which you didn't
which not
get.
everybody's able to,
Yeah.
access. So
Two different trajectories there, and
yeah.
all that comes with it. And
Yeah.
Hollie, how about you? Would you like to let us into what brought you into the world of HCTDs?
Yeah, so our story began not that long ago, back in 2018. My husband was 26 years old, fit, healthy, running every night, playing footy, went through his life bruising, hurting himself, lots of injuries in football, but nothing ever picked up. Lots of joint pain. No one ever kind of picked up what was going on. And it got to when he was 26 years old, when he had an aortic dissection and collapsed. And he couldn't talk to me. He was just spaced out. When he came round to it, he was telling me he had pain in his chest, he couldn't breathe, he couldn't see, and it was really unusual. So he ended up going to hospital and had no answers. They couldn't give him an answer why this had happened to his body. And then 6 weeks later, it happened again. Another part of his body dissected and tore, and he had the same thing, heart attacks, sort of similar symptoms, and dizziness, and same thing, collapsing on the ground. I'm calling another ambulance, and we're saying, we need answers. So this went on for about a year of repeated aortic and arterial dissection in his
Could
body.
you just tell us for those who don't know, what does a dissection mean?
So a dissection is it is where, so when I say that, it's how do I explain this? Um what's the best way to explain this?
So it's a tear in a artery, and usually a main artery, so a heart artery or vessel, or vessels in the neck can also commonly experience it, and can also happen in renal arteries, which are sort of abdominal arteries. So basically any arteries throughout your body, it's a tearing from sheer force, or
It basically
Not
just
good.
rips like tissue
yeah.
paper. It's kind of
Yeah.
like solid,
Yeah.
and then he'll suffer a dissection where it just tears. It just rips
Yeah.
in half.
For no reason.
For no
Well, it's
reason.
heritable. That's the
Yeah.
reason, but
Yeah.
It's due to
you're not
the
doing anything.
faulty connective tissue.
Multi-collagen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Yep.
faulty connective
Yeah.
tissue, the integrity isn't there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
right.
And
So
then I suppose across years, that propensity for that to happen is greater as well.
yeah, as they get older. Yeah.
It can occur sort of from teenage years on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
So I guess
also really sheds, we can say things, but when these things are described, it really gives, the gravity of that.
yeah. So I guess for Brad, he suffered this for about a year, and it wasn't until the Royal Melbourne decided to do genetic testing, and they kind of had an idea of he would have some sort of Ehlers-Danlos because of his symptoms, and because of his strong family history. Brad's mum passed away from dissection at 44. His auntie, her sister, also passed away at the age of 37 after giving birth. There was kind of a pattern, and so they went, we need to do genetic testing. And
Right.
that
So
came,
nobody had pieced together that these were
no,
unusual things in one family.
nope, no one had figured it out until Brad came along and had lived through his
Started saying, "Oh, now I think about it, this happened to my mum." Or hang on a
yeah,
sec, this happened.
to her
Wow.
sister.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of put the pieces together, and they did that genetic testing, and it came back with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is
Mhm.
one of the rarer subtypes of EDS. And it is one of the most fatal types of EDS because they are at risk of spontaneous arterial and organ rupture or any time throughout their life,
This is
anywhere in
very
the body.
stressful,
Very. And
incredibly
it was even
stressful
more
to know that.
stressful than going, well, we have children. So we had already
And
had,
at that point, you already had children as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So my sons were 2 and 2 months. Actually, I was pregnant already while he was having
This was
genetic
happening.
testing. Yeah, yep. So that then led us to the boys being tested at 2 years and 2 months old. At the Royal Children's Hospital, we had a referral put in just to say their dad was positive. Let's get them tested. I also have a daughter who is 7 months old and she's negative. She doesn't have vets.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was just one of those things that kind of opened up big can of worms. It changed everything for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being willing to share that, and also shed a light into what this can mean for families as well, as we'll get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Knowing all that you know, what's your biggest hope for kids with heritable connective tissue disorders and their families and loved ones when navigating this?
I think I hope they have a good supportive network because it can feel very lonely at times. And I hope that they can get their diagnoses because sometimes that can also be really hard to get because sometimes you aren't listened to. It was only my children got theirs so young because of their dad, whereas other people go through their life and not know until they experience something.
Until you're 26.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
And Janna, what about you? What's your biggest hope?
Quite similar. It's just that younger generations, the next generation's kids now won't have to fight so hard for a diagnosis. That people our age are also aware of it and fighting for diagnosis for our kids, where a generation ago there was even less knowledge and awareness, so that wasn't happening. It's just that through increased knowledge and awareness and clinician understanding, we can get the diagnoses earlier, we can get the surveillance, we can get the early interventions. It's just that care will be improved. That's my biggest hope. Yeah.
And is it the wrong thing for me to say, is there a hope of a cure?
I mean,
we hope.
Mate, we hope. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I hope maybe there's treatments, maybe some gene therapies might come, but even that's a long-term hope. Yeah.
Well, what are some of the common and perhaps frustrating public misconceptions then about HCTDs, and how have you seen that have an impact on families and kids?
I think the biggest
we've covered some of it.
We've covered some of it, yeah. And I mean, the assumption and the misconceptions kind of tie into each other, I feel, in a lot of ways. But I think the biggest misconception is that it's just being bendy, it's just having hypermobility, and that it's not. Hypermobility is ultimately, for some subtypes, it is a very, very core component, but for a lot of the rarer subtypes, there are other key manifestations and diagnostic criterias that aren't to do with hypermobility. And the impacts go beyond just joints. Yeah.
Hollie, any frustrations there? And
yeah, most definitely. The amount of times that medical professionals have said, oh yes, I know about Ehlers-Danlos, and I have to say, but do you know about vascular Ehlers-Danlos in particular? Because they are different. And also, as Janna had already said, that a lot of the time they say, oh yeah, it means you've got bendy joints and you're very flexible. And it's not just that. There are so many components to it. There can be layers upon layers that children deal with, and it can be down to their learning. It can be their muscles. It's fine motor, it's gross motor. There's so many different things that go with having a connective tissue disorder.
Yeah.
Keeping an open mind and being curious and investigative is scientifically investigative sounds to be the call to action here, given what you've said.
Clinical curiosity, I think.
Clinical curiosity,
maintaining
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just sort of shoehorning or dismissing. Um, so we've heard some of the detail, but how many Australian children and youth do we think are living with HCTDs right now? That's heritable
Yeah.
connective tissue disorders. And is that data likely to be accurate if we have it?
Look, the data we have is pretty much not non-existent. But working off, Australian Bureau of Statistics population data and what we know about prevalence data globally, you know, we can extrapolate some loose figures. But it's good to remember as well, up to 20% of the general population do have some hypermobility, but it may not be syndromic. It may not be symptomatic. But then when we look at prevalence statistics for hypermobility spectrum disorder and hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which has a prevalence of about 1 in 500, using the population data that we know, there's about 5 million kids under 18, I think. So there's probably about 10,000 kids living with HSD and HEDS, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos. Looking at vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the condition that Hollie's children and husband live with, which has a prevalence of somewhere between 1 in 50,000 and 1 in 200,000. We might be looking at there's about 100, 25 to 100 of kids living with that condition in Australia. And then one of the ultra rare types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome has a prevalence of 1 in a million. So we're looking at only about 5 or 6 of those. So there's around 10,000. The majority of them are hypermobile subtype and hypermobility spectrum disorder. But that's, so 10,000 before we're looking at Loeys-Dietz, Marfan, Stickler syndrome, and the other dozens and dozens of them. So there's a lot.
That's exactly right. We're talking about maybe singularly, people might say that's not a lot of people, but when looked at collectively, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And 10,000 or 2 doesn't matter really. The key points remain.
Yeah.
This next question, I feel like we've already covered it, but let's just go back to it to see if there's something else we need to pick up, and that's, is there a risk of delayed diagnosis, or in most cases picked up easily? So the question I would like to ask there on the back of what you've both said is there differences, or are there differences in, is this a gendered issue as well? Is the diagnosis higher in boys or girls? Is it about the same? Is the diagnosis of either boys or girls more or less? Is that something you have some observations on?
Most of the rare types occur equally in boys and girls. There's no sort of stark difference there. The difference probably comes in with the hypermobile subtype, but the evidence isn't really clear whether it's that potentially girls and females and people assigned female at birth, they have a higher symptom burden, and it could be due to the hormonal fluctuations. So perhaps more girls are being diagnosed because their symptom burden is driving that. But there are really, really stark delays in diagnosis. So some evidence that came out last year put the diagnostic odyssey for HSD at 17 years and for hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos at 22 years. So that's the average time to diagnosis for those two conditions. So really going off that, kids are not being diagnosed until they're adults. And then looking at the rarer subtypes like vascular EDS and, just looking at them from the lens of being rare diseases, the diagnostic delay is typically probably between 5 and 8 years still. So there's a long way to go in improving when diagnosis occurs, I think. It is a big problem there. And
it puts it into sharp focus, doesn't it? The ages that you're stating there when it's heritable, meaning you arrive at birth or conception with it.
Yes, that's right.
Uh,
Yes,
so,
it's been there.
you know,
Yeah.
from 0 to
Mm.
25, 26 or 21, that's
Mm.
decades.
Yeah. And I think some of the rarer types where there is an established diagnosis already, as in the case with Hollie's husband, and then the children being diagnosed, your boys being diagnosed a lot earlier, that's a great, a good outcome. Obviously, Brad's diagnosis came too late, especially given the family history that was there. But I think as we have advances in genetic testing, the cost is coming down, it's more available. Hopefully those cases that do have the red flags for the rarer types that can be diagnosed via genetic testing, those gaps will close. I hope. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to the kinds of complications that kids with heritable connective tissue disorders face? We've talked about some of those.
Yeah, so I think the gastrointestinal issues can be huge for kids with connective tissue disorders. Pretty severe and chronic abdominal pain, disordered eating. There's a high co-occurrence of neurodiversity. So then we've also got sensory sensitivities and differences in that respect as well that feeds into, schooling and, capacity to manage pain and fatigue, like Hollie said, which is a huge component. The pain and fatigue can be massive as well. And a lot of that comes from the hypermobile joints fatiguing more easily because it takes a lot more effort to, go through your daily movements than it does if your joints weren't going to the end of range all the time. Low muscle tone can also play a part in it for certain types of connective tissue disorders. Yeah, I mean,
So we've got even the individual differences, even in the same subtype as well. Every
Yes.
child is different.
Yeah, each subtype of EDS does present quite differently. Yeah.
Yeah, but even within that, I mean,
Within, yes,
there's the child
yes.
themselves.
The comorbidities, yeah, and it
Yes.
can fluctuate as well. You could have chronic GI issues for 2 years and then all of a sudden they might improve and nobody really knows what, like it's, there's still a lot of uncertainty in symptom and in trajectory of symptoms and being able to understand why certain symptoms occur when they do. There is some evidence around neuroimmune kind of implications. So we do see that kids, and adults as well with heritable connective tissue disorders can experience more post-viral fatigue and post-viral complications. So there's definitely, it's really full on, I think, in terms of what can occur and the manifestations. Yeah. Have I missed anything?
Yeah. And
Hollie,
I guess
that I'm sure I have. Yeah.
I was going to say, I guess one of the major complications and the cause of complications is the late diagnosis. That Hollie, do you want to add to what's been said there by Janna?
Yeah, I feel like with the post-viral sort of um stuff, it's so true. And I feel like my children in particular, with their type of Ehlers-Danlos, they just get sick so easy and it takes so much longer to recover. And that the symptoms are just, I feel so full on. It takes them weeks to not have that fatigue. And 1 year they might have nothing, and then the next year they're having other problems in their body. It just pops out of nowhere, and it's so different every year. Like Janna was saying, you might go 2 years with one problem, and then the next year you've got something else. So it can be unpredictable, which makes it really hard for school because they are missing school, and they're trying to keep up, and it's not their fault.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think a big part of fatigue also can be dysautonomia as well, which is really tricky to diagnose and manage in children. So, there are so many layers to what's going on in a little
And for those
body.
who don't know the term dysautonomia, do you want to give us a quick.
So autonomic nervous system dysfunction. So it's basically your body's ability to manage and reach a homeostasis for the things that happen without you really even realizing. So it's respiration, breathing rate, it's blood pressure control, it's heart rate, it's temperature regulation. Again, it's a very big umbrella term. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I know
For
it.
quite a few conditions. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, again, all the things that people might take for granted, they're the things that are being affected without
Yeah.
Yeah. My
not necessarily an external
Yes. Yeah. And
pressure or reason. Yeah.
yeah, so it's dysregulation to those systems. And I think for children particularly, it's also really hard to describe the feelings of those things occurring in their bodies until they're a little bit older because they don't have the words to, you know, explain how they're feeling that dysregulation. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, Hollie, on the back of all of that, and we asked about complications, what about the siblings? You mentioned that your daughter has not inherited this gene or these genes.
Yeah.
And also thinking about, you know, the mental health issues that go alongside as a complication, if we want to call it that. Do you want to speak to how siblings and even peers of kids with heritable connective tissue disorders are impacted, and what should families be across?
I feel like siblings, this is something that as the boys and my daughter get older, and they kind of so Hunter and Isaac are very aware that they have vascular Ehlers-Danlos and Isla doesn't. And we have made it very clear that it doesn't matter that you do and she doesn't. It's not, we've made it to protect their mental health too. It's not, we don't want them to think it's a bad thing. We don't want them to think it's like the end of the world. We want them to understand that they do have this condition, but it doesn't mean you're any different to your sibling. And sort of both my boys are also neurodivergent. It's the same thing. I don't make a big deal about them being autistic. They know it. They're very aware of that, but we don't make it like it's a big deal. This is just who you are. And I think for the boys too, it's hard for them and their peers because they want to play football. They want to be rough, especially my youngest son, Isaac. He is a rough and tumble jump, climb, and I'm like, mate, you need to be careful. He gets covered in bruises so easily. And the school's always ringing me saying, Isaac's fallen off the playground, he's hit his head, he's okay, but what do you want us to do? Like, I think for their peers, it's one of those things that they will, as they grow up, start noticing. And I think it's really important to have open, honest conversations with your children. Explain what they have, what happens to their body and why, but also linking with services like psychologist to kind of process that because it can come with a little bit of grief. And I know when I first we were told about our children having it, the grief was very intense and it was very upsetting and very hard. I'm like, what do you mean my children can't go on roller coasters and have a normal life playing football with their friends? And what do you mean they need to be careful in a bouncy castle? Like, what do you mean? And they had said to me,
And how are we even going to manage that?
Yeah, like how am I going to stop them from playing with their friends? So it's kind of, I guess, just being honest with your children and trying to guide them into do other things, you know, that are safe for them. And also being honest with their friends. Explain this is what they have and we need to keep them safe. I've been into my son's school multiple times to sit in the classroom and say, hey, you know, I'm Hunter or Isaac's mum. This is what they have. This is how we keep them safe at school because there's been a number of times where children just want to play and they will just jump on them or knock them to the ground or play tag. And, you know, it's the shoving and the pushing that happens during play. And then I've kind of got to explain that to children. And it's so hard. They're so little. They're like, what do we mean? I can't play those games or I need to change the way I do these things.
Yes, that's a really interesting one. And I think Janna, in your case, you said two of your boys. Is that 2 out of 2, or
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they're one of them has a HSD diagnosis and just being monitored. So I've just been through extensive genetic testing, as I did have a dissection in October myself. But I don't have one of the known variants. I've got a variant of unknown significance. So I'm sort of in a bit of no man's land in that respect. But yeah, my kids, I suppose, they still quite active, still participate in most things because we haven't got that VEDS, gene. We haven't been told we should avoid all of those high risk things. And I think that's a really hard thing to navigate, Holly. Definitely empathize with that. We have concerns around activity, especially probably more so since my dissection. But again, it's really tricky to navigate. It's I think siblings, it can be particularly hard as well if one sibling has higher medical needs than the other child. It can appear to one sibling like more of the parent's time is being diverted to that child, and you're investing more time and energy, and and then the other child can feel a bit sort of not neglected, but that they're aware of that. They're aware that there's time and energy, and that there's this worry, I suppose, around trying to navigate certain aspects of the conditions. And I think again it's the invisibility as well for other siblings as well. It's hard for kids to understand something they can't see, like you were saying, Holly, going into the school and talking to the students, because it's tricky.
It's hard enough for adults, it sounds, let alone other kids. But then, I don't know, maybe the kids get it and accept it more easily once they're told. I don't know, but
I feel like the children at my son's school, they're great. Like once they're told, they're like, "Oh, yep, we need to keep them safe." And they've come to me before in the morning in the playground, and they're like, "Oh, we need to be gentle with Isaac because he bruises really easily and he can get hurt, so we have to keep him safe at school." I'm like, "That's right." But even
that's what I imagined.
they're pretty. They'll take it on board. But even next Friday is Reds for Veds Day, and that is a campaign that's spreading awareness for vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And the school, all the children know they put on their red and they do their walk at school to support and raise awareness for it. So they're open.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And I guess that openness can apply to, I guess any medical or mental health condition that somebody's willing to disclose. And the more that happens, and I'm not making any judgments about disclosure or not, that's an individual choice, but I guess it becomes more normalized that different bodies, different minds, different backgrounds, and that diversity, different brains, that the more we're the same in our diversity of all the different things that people are coming into a classroom with, including teachers, I guess. There'll be teachers with HCTDs.
Most definitely. And then you think they would understand then really well.
Well, there's probably they might not be paired up, and that's probably the issue. But
they might not be diagnosed.
I can see both of you are going to make a huge play to change this. So, what is the current population? Do we think it's 10,000? The current population of school-age children.
Up to around potentially. Obviously re-emphasizing that the bulk of it is the hypermobile subtype.
Yes. And not diminishing that either.
Not diminishing it, no, in any way, but also, wanting to point that out, that there are, it spans common chronic illness to ultra rare, chronic illness and disease. So,
and I forget the exact term, but it was something like a symptom of significance or a complication of significance. You said before about yourself, and there could be all of these, you know, other people captured in this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That haven't been diagnosed or have something so rare that it's just not hitting, the signals aren't there, or the signals are there, but the knowledge isn't there to pick it up. And
I would say the majority of that 10,000 probably are undiagnosed. Yeah. Working just off,
that would be, so it's a lot of people. And we've touched on this. Do kids with HCTDs currently miss a lot of school? And Hollie, you've said yes, they do.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
I feel like they do from my personal experience with my sons. They miss a lot of school for appointments. My sons do, over the years, they've done occupational therapy, they've done physio, psychologists, speech therapy. All these things are sort of intertwined into each other. Cardiologist, geneticist.
Podiatrists.
Yeah, that's it. All those
Viral things,
they're missing
length of
school.
those, fatigue, I'm imagining, based
Picking
on
them
what
up.
you've said.
I pick them up all the time. They miss out a lot of school events. It's being, school camp. There's times where teachers don't feel confident and they're worried and they're like, what do we do? Or if this happens, they miss a lot of school in general from their symptoms, but also appointments.
And how much time would you kind of calculate that as? How much it's intermittent, indefinite school absence, isn't it? Like it's a day here or there. It's a few hours here. It's another few hours there. And this is going to be across the whole 13 years of school life, because it just is. So when you add all of that up, I mean, chronic school absence, based on the kind of canonical 10% of school missed or more, is considered chronic school absence, and that's 1 day every 2 weeks. So if you added all of this time up over a school life, that's chronic school
easily
absence.
I would put attendance down at around 80% at times.
Ours is pretty low, and then with school refusal on top. So
yes. So
and then there are
the
a lot of
ability to not attend school due to high levels of stress, distress, and anxiety.
There's also a lot of children in the community who do, convert to doing hybrid models, flexible learning on a more permanent basis. There also is a considerable number of kids in the community who have gone to homeschooling because they just can't maintain the regular routine, the long hours,
and that's a complication for families right there. And particularly mothers. I'm just going to come out and say it based on our data.
There's the economic burden, the mental
the economics,
load,
the breaks that, or not doing work outside of the home, not being able to do that. The some people on these calls report the increased cost of having chronic conditions in the home. For one or more people is as well as reduced income, and the caring, the medical appointments.
It's not just the lost income. It's all of the added, especially for families that don't have, if the kids haven't gained access to NDIS, which we know is becoming more difficult. It's more nuanced. It's not always there for children, so being able to afford supports is difficult. I mean, it's prohibitive. A lot of people just can't do it,
and this is one of the things we're trying to shine a light on also for mothers. And it's not saying that fathers don't care, it's not saying that at all, but it is women that our data shows is are putting in the carers' duties and the school maintenance and those types of things. So Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the missing school component and just also say for those who are listening, children living with HCTDs are definitely covered by the Disability Standards for Education, which is a national regulation that every school in Australia must adhere to. The standards come from the Disability Discrimination Act, and it doesn't matter whether it's kinder, year 12, year 8, at a Catholic school, a public school, an independent school. In Victoria, in South Australia, and Northern Territory, the standards apply to every school in Australia, and these children are absolutely covered by the standards, which means they are entitled to access to their classrooms and their school on an equal basis to others. They're entitled to access the national curriculum, to learn alongside peers, to receive individual learning plans and adjustments to enable them to be participating on equal terms to others and having the learning opportunities. And that means additional support. That support is funded by the federal government through to schools directly through disability levies on top of the enrolment that children receive from their state or territory or school system, or the Commonwealth funds that go to schools for that purpose. And it also enables connective technology or technology or other technologies, assistive devices, to enable all of that on equal terms to others. So I put that there because that's not something that everybody knows, and the way that disability can be defined by the NDIS, for example, or the general population. The standards are really specific. Illness, disease of the body, and of course other disabilities, developmental disabilities, and all sorts of things. So this is a really big key to the kinds of things Hollie's been saying about advocating for young people in these circumstances, because the disability standards, it's the language of schools. If you say it, the school knows what it is. If you make that connection, the school is obligated to provide the things that I said. And the school can also get funding from these levies and their own systems too, to be able to make these accommodations and these individual learning plans come to life. And we talked about things, this is not just about math, science and English. It's about all subjects, and also about the participation in school as well. For example, for art, the arts and sports and excursions and other things, to be able to make adjustments so that a young person isn't simply left out because it's too hard. So I always give the DESE a big plug, because it's a great connection to make, and can really, and can involve the allied health services as well that you've mentioned.
Does it require a diagnosis? Sorry, that's it. No. So it can
be applied through imputation, and that imputation means where there are clear symptoms even without a diagnosis, that the standards apply. So, I mean, you can look that up, you can read it, you can interrogate it, because it's really clear. And the amazing thing for me during my policy paper in 2020 was I was looking at, we need specific legislation for these kids, and then I found, the standards says everything. It was written in 2025 and has had sort of updates and things, but everything is there already. Including to provide two-way digital connection to a classroom for a child who can't physically access the school. And I think this is a game changer, because Hollie, the work that Missing School's been trying to do, we have been doing it, but is to one day see every school as a hybrid, flexible school situation for children for
Definitely.
whom
Wouldn't that be
the
amazing?
current model doesn't work, through no fault of the child's. So to be able to, if fatigue was there and home rest was needed, to be able to then dial in for part of the day, take your lessons alongside peers, for as long as you can, for as much as you can, or are able to, and that's what we have kids doing. So and the schools that have done that have been incredible. Some of the things that teachers have done and accommodated, and just like you said, the kids in the classroom are like, oh, they're here through a screen, or they're here physically, and it doesn't really make much difference to them. It has a very positive effect on peers as well, in terms of compassion and empathy and understanding. So it's something I always like to mention on these calls, to just bring that into the frame for people as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's still providing that connection, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's also about socialization. School's about rites of passage as well, and being able to be part of a community.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and kids just want to be normal. Just want to fit in and do what kids do, play, be with other kids, not with adults. And when they can, obviously, be able to move around and get up to hijinks. And as long as it's safe, we should all support that.
Yeah.
As long as it's safe. So just rounding that out, love to hear from you on a few dot points about what the critical times in school life for these kids are, and what should families and schools be prepared for.
So thinking about that question, I think it's all critical. There's no point we can say is less important, time period that is less important than another. The early years are foundational for, that early consolidation of reading and writing and learning, but also socialization, but, then later teen years are also really important for all the same reasons, So for me, I think it's all important, the critical points, and we need to maintain that connection throughout, like you say, with a hybrid flexible model if we have to, or because there's no point where we can say, oh, it's okay, they can miss 2 months in year 2, it's only year 2. It's not true. They need to be connected at each and every stage. Yeah. In a way that works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There'll never be an argument from me on that point. And what I come to learn over the years in my narratives about this was, sure, we're doing this for them, but if these kids aren't in our school communities, what are we missing out on from them?
Yeah.
That they bring, that they're not able to bring? What are we as a community missing from them, not to make the assumption that they just need help?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Hollie, do you have some words to add to those?
Yeah, I agree. I think the missing chunks of school puts them so behind. The amount of learning they miss, even for 2 weeks off school, they're behind, they're trying to catch up. And for children who have learning difficulties, it's extra hard to try and keep up. So I feel like, we need to be making sure that there are other options for their learning. And as Janna was saying, there's no, it's all critical. Every year of schooling is important. Early years, later on, it's all equally as important.
And do you notice that your children experience anxiety about falling behind, or having the sense of having to catch up, or do they just say, oh, in the end, it's just too much to even contemplate?
Yes, they both experience a lot of anxiety around school. My youngest in particular, because he's also dyslexic and he is quite behind in his learning. So he already has a lot of school refusal because he knows he struggles at school and he knows he sees other children doing their learning and his is adaptive, which is great, but he knows that he's not up to their level, and then he misses school because he's pulled a joint muscle in his groin last week. So then he's off school and then he's going back and he's missed an excursion. He's missed writing about that excursion. And now they're learning about olden day times and he's got no idea why. So yeah, I've got one son who experiences a lot of anxiety around I'm behind now. And then my other son, he kind of just goes, whatever. I'll just do whatever I need to do on the day.
Coping mechanisms.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's their potential sitting there too, isn't it? That they may not be able to mobilize and express or experience because they're just running to keep up.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
did you want to add anything to that, Janna?
No, I mean, the only thing I want to add is that I know, and it's probably not quite this question, but it's around like attendance awards. Some schools have attendance awards, and I feel like they are so not inclusive for kids that just aren't making, 100% attendance because they physically can't,
So much
it's
pressure.
yeah. And it just
And you shouldn't lose your place at a school either just because you can't attend. I know some private schools are really strict. If you don't attend, see you later.
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of rankings that get given. Again, this is sort of some perverse incentivization, right, for a child who actually cannot control that.
Yes, it's out of their
and we're talking
control.
about specific cases.
Yeah.
There are so many chronic, rare, and complex health conditions that keep kids physically out of school alone. Then let's add the mental health ones.
Yeah.
And then let's add transport, and then let's add young carers, and then let's add, rural or remote or a complex family situation.
Yep.
And as you say, because there's such a push for attendance now, it's trying to incentivize that in a positive way. But for those who actually cannot ever win that award,
just adds to their guilt of, I didn't, I can't, I'm not going to get that award, or,
And I remember when my son, who had and that's why Missing School exists, a very, very complex condition that he is cured of now, but 2 years of medical isolation and a bone marrow transplant and all of the things. He's really a walking miracle, an N equals 1. I remember when he went back to school and all the awards were given out and all the kids were getting awards for this and that. And he had done hospital school every day in the hospital through the most debilitating circumstances and physical duress. And he was overlooked for that. I felt that. I felt that. I was like, this kid has tried to do school through all of this, but nobody sees it.
There's no recognition.
There's no recognition. And I say this because the kids we're talking about and what they go through, like that's an award on its own, let's face it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many days where they go to school with pain, and they get through it and it's invisible and, there's perseverance.
They just show up, deal with it. Like if you looked at them, you wouldn't know there's anything wrong with them. It's the same as my husband. He's the same. You look at him and you wouldn't know he has leukemia. You wouldn't know he has VEDS. You wouldn't know he's deaf. Like you wouldn't know any of those things.
They're not having a choice in that, right?
No.
So if you're going to participate in life, you're taking that with you, and I guess sadly become used to it as well. So it's I think what gets awarded, and I'd really like to flag this for the team in this part of the conversation, is you know, this is something we also need to be having a conversation about is how these awards and meritorious moments are, you know, what they're focused on and what people are actually living out there. I think this is, you know, productivity is a little bit the same. It's sort of, you know, the harder you work and the faster and the more you do and the more output you have, it's, you know, congratulations. But there's so many other things out there that should become part of the conversation and be understood. I think that invisibility, again, is showing up in what we're talking about. And
Definitely.
yeah. So as we come to the end of our conversation on school, and rounding up on the end of our conversation in full, we've talked about the biggest challenges and the vulnerabilities, and I'm sure there are more that, you know, we can only imagine. What's happening now in schools around this, and is it good enough? And if it's not, like, what do you think schools need to know and do? What do we need to do differently? Not just in one school, but
I think there needs to be more education for educators around complex chronic illnesses as a whole. You know, obviously making it disease or condition specific is, you know, an impossible task. But understand, you know, giving a greater understanding of fatigue and pain, you know, those common occurrences that are common to a lot of complex chronic illnesses, those symptoms that occur, you know, in other conditions. Having an understanding of that, you know, so that you can better adapt and better understand, you know, a child in your care's, you know, position and how they're feeling and how they're moving through the day, and offering more rest breaks, you know, but again, it should go beyond just the kids that have the complex chronic illnesses to if a child needs a rest break, maybe all children should have the opportunity to have a rest break.
yes.
Yeah. So I think more education is definitely needed. Specific to HCTDs, I think we need more resources for schools to be able to educate them as well when they have a child with a known HCT. Obviously not all schools, but education tools for when there is a child known to have one of these conditions. Yeah, and that's something that CTDNA would like to work towards, being able to develop those resources. But obviously, as a very small volunteer lived experience run organisation, you know, everything is slow going. Despite a lot of determination and sheer grit, it's still slow going. But it's something that's coming up again and again in a lot of conversations, that some more targeted resources, especially for the rarer types, for education settings is needed. Yeah.
Thanks, Janna. And Hollie?
Well, for example, when my son started school, they asked for a medical plan. There was no medical plan at the GP for chronic illness or connective tissue. So we had to make one. We had to physically make one with the school, which gives them a rundown on what to do if the boys have a medical episode, because there wasn't one. Whereas asthma, diabetes, epilepsy, they have one because they're well known. Whereas a rare connective tissue disorder doesn't. So I feel like maybe schools, same as Janna was saying, they need more education on what they are, how to support children, but also simple things like a medical plan. Shouldn't that be something that overall they have access to?
And the medical plan, the health plan, the safety plan goes along with the individual learning plan. And there's such good points. And, you know, we have it, you know, Janna saying there, the big picture, and then Hollie backing it up with some really explicit, specific example of how this shows up when that consistency is not in place. And I'm happy to say that that's exactly what Missing School is doing with these Live and Learns, is we're up to 43 now, number 43, and it's to try and take all of that golden thread through all of them, because I can tell you there's so many commonalities. Different disease group, different specific on the medical side, the mental health side, but the family lived experience and the experience with school, so much the same. So we're hoping to be able to bring that evidence forward for a nationally consistent approach in schools to chronic conditions, complex conditions. Also to make it easier for educators, right?
Yeah.
There's multiple kids walking into that classroom every day with multiple conditions. And teachers, we would hope to be able to get to a place where here is the information, like here is the standard of what you do for kids with complex and chronic conditions. Here are the specific things you need to know for the HCTD. And this is, we don't want you to become a medical expert. We just want you to know this so that you can keep them safe or make sure they're safe and teach them so they can learn and be part of the class. So on wrapping up, is there anything you've missed or that you would like to say or is impressing upon you to say now about HCTDs? And let us know. Tell us.
I mean, I think we've covered an awful lot, and it's such a big topic, and there's a lot of nuance to it because each child's experience, whilst they're similar, they're still different. But I think the main thing is just more support, more awareness, more education, earlier diagnosis for kids so that the early interventions are available, everything that we've spoken about. Is that your call to action in 7 words or less, Janna? No, sorry. My call to action is support awareness, believe families, and improve care early.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Hollie? You missed anything you want to say? Any burning point you want to put in here?
Oh, there's so many things I could add, but then I'd be talking forever. I think about MissingSchool, and then I think about children who have these in connective tissue disorders, and then I think about their parents that have them, and then the MissingSchool that comes from having a parent who's got them. My children miss school because their parents unwell, or they have appointments. There's just so many more things I could say, but it comes down to be aware. Educating educators and medical professionals and advocating for yourself. Don't give up. If you think something's not right, keep pushing.
Keep pushing.
Is that your 7+ words, your call to action? Because it was absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
I love it. So Janna and Hollie, thank you so much for sharing so generously your knowledge, your experience, your ideas and your wishes, and just from our heart to yours, our greatest thanks for the work that you do and in your families as well as in the community, and to share that with us has been really extraordinary and special. So I want to shout out to both of you, but also to CTDN Australia. You can find them at ctdna.org.au. Go there, do whatever they ask you to do, give, help, volunteer, get resources, share the information. Big shout out for this organisation and the work that they're doing to help so many people not have a very lonely journey or a journey where they don't know what's actually going on. Or to get that diagnosis that is so important as early as possible.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Live and Learn, Janna and Hollie.
Thank you for having us and all of your work also.
Thank you so much. It's our great pleasure.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Help us turn up the volume so all kids are seen and heard. Follow along, like, share, comment, or leave us a review because we love hearing from you.
And if you want to donate, head to missingschool.org.au because every dollar makes a difference.